Hello, I'm Will the Gamer, and today I want to talk about dragons. In the mythos that I have created, dragons are the only ones to have survived the Age of Monsters. For more on that, check my basic world history video. But today we're going to go into some real detail about dragons, and really what they are as a creature. Dragons are probably the most diverse and unique species within my mythos. You see, dragons have the innate ability to adapt to their environments. This in turn ended up making many different species and varieties of dragon. So in total there are actually 6 different types of dragons. There are black, white, brown, green, red, and blue dragons. White dragons are the closest thing there are to the original dragons before they were altered. They don't have many uniquely defining characteristics, other than they live in the mountains, they're smaller than most of the other dragons, and are very fast. The next would be the red dragon. Red dragons adapted to live in molten environments and extreme heats. They are much larger than their white dragon brethren and have developed the ability to breathe fire. Next up are the green dragons. Green dragons are wingless dragons that live in dense forests or jungles. They are incredibly large, often mistaken for hills. They sleep for such extended periods of time that bushes and trees will grow on their backs. This does not bother the dragon because their armored plating is so thick. Next on the list is the black dragon. The black dragon is another wingless dragon that lives in the swamps. They live in some of the most vile and toxic environments. As such, their scales look black and rotted. It acts like an alligator hiding beneath the surface of the waters, waiting for prey to come towards it, and then jumps out and snaps, crushing it completely. It is one of the most feared dragons, despite being one of the most rare. Living in such a toxic environment has also given it the ability to spew toxic gases at its enemies. This acid is potent enough to melt flesh. Next up, we have the brown dragons, also known as the sand dragons. For this one you want to think tremors. These dragons make their homes in the sand dunes, and they bury themselves underground and swim in it like a sand shark. They are the smallest dragon, but also the most numerous. They are also the most dangerous to the intelligent species of the world, as they will eat anything that comes close to them. Last but not least is the blue dragons. Blue dragons are also known as water dragons, ocean dragons, or more commonly as leviathans. They are by far the largest dragon of all the species, doubling the size of the green dragon. They also have much weaker scales than the other dragons, making them not as heavy or cumbersome, allowing them to move freely underwater. While they do not usually attack ships, sailors are so afraid of them that they will not go onto open water. There are rumors within the empire of a leviathan that is so big it spans 3 man-o-wars stem to stern. But now that I'm done talking about the varieties of dragons, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about their anatomy. Dragons go through 5 developmental stages: lesser worm, greater worm, wyvern, drake, and then full-sized dragon. You see, dragons will lay hundreds of eggs at a time, and all of these will spawn into lesser worms. Lesser worms are about 1 meter long, and they'll feed on basically anything they can get into their face. They have no arms and they have no legs, and they must slither across the ground until they develop further. Once enough time has passed and they have eaten enough, they'll become a greater worm. When they become a greater worm, you'll first start to see them taking on the appearances of their full-formed dragon self. Though of course they will still be far smaller at about 2 to 3 meters. Usually at the greater worm stage, even though they look like their adult forms, they don't really have any of the capabilities their adult forms do. However, the next stage is called the wyvern. The wyvern stage is where they start to adopt the personalities and abilities of their adult forms. At this point they're only 3 to 5 meters, but they mirror their adult form and capabilities. This is also the point where they start hunting larger prey. After years of eating larger prey, they'll become drakes. Drakes usually range between 10 to 15 meters long and mirror their adult form exactly. The only difference between a drake and a regular dragon is the length and their scales. You see, their scales haven't quite hardened enough to be able to withstand anything. This continues to make them vulnerable to conventional weaponry. Drakes are also a major threat to outlying villages and farms because they will attack livestock and people along the roads. If a drake is smart enough, and it can do this for years on end without getting caught or being killed by something larger, they will eventually become a full-fledged dragon. At this stage, they'll be between 20 and 60 meters depending on their breed, brown dragons being on the lower end and blue dragons being on the highest end. At this stage, their scales have hardened to such an extent that they can't be killed by conventional weaponry anymore. At this stage, the only way to kill a dragon is by heavy cannon fire. Players attempting to kill a dragon will have to either get a ship or an airship and bombard them heavily. The dragon, of course, will then attack the airship, so don't count on it being an easy fight. But I'll be going over airships and ships in my next video. At the dragon stage of evolution, they also become a lot lazier and more communal. Full-fledged dragons are actually less of a threat to large communities of people because they have to hunt bigger game to survive. So generally speaking, a dragon will either be hunting wyverns or drakes. After eating maybe 1 or 2 drakes, a dragon will go into a deep slumber. At this point, the asexual dragons will be producing eggs. They will sleep for roughly a year, then hatch hundreds of them. The eggs will then become worms after about 6 months and will either try to devour each other or escape the breeding pit entirely. Then the dragon will rinse and repeat this process until it dies of old age, usually around 300 years old. And that's all for dragons today, so I'll be Will the Gamer, signing out.